We're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs here on the Red, Gold, and Bold, making moves when it comes to the coaching staff. Eric Bieniemy is back. What does that mean? What does it take to be a success? We'll be talking about that. Does hiring Bieniemy mean that the status quo is going to be the story with the offense? We'll talk about Matt Nagy not getting the job in Tennessee. What does this mean? Reaction to Chad O'Shea coming into the coaching staff. The Bills lost. Does it settle it? Josh Allen not in Patrick Mahomes' class. Do the Bills get it right, firing Sean McDermott? The Broncos set to rule the AFC West for the foreseeable future. Maybe get into Mike McDowell taking the offensive coordinator job. Reports tonight that he will be the Chargers OC. We're talking about it right here, right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
And thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Off and running here with another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Eric Bieniemy making his return to the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's start here, Jeff. Why is Eric Bieniemy back? Why is this the choice that they're making in your mind?
He's familiar. I mean, that's the most obvious one. He's been down this road before, been a part of Andy Reid's staff for a long time before he left. And I think he's safe, to be honest with you. I think it shows you that Andy Reid's not all that interested in making huge sweeping changes to his offense. That, Eric Bieniemy, what he brings is toughness and leadership and accountability, some of the things that Patrick Mahomes asked for or mentioned that he'd like to have in the next OC. As far as the X's and O's part, I don't know how he's going to bring anything different than what we've already seen from this offense. And that's a little bit disturbing because this offense needs to change up, and it's probably not going to change very much.
Sam, I think Jeff is right on all counts. 1 year, Ben Johnson, I guess, we heard Patrick Mahomes, he was looking for somebody that hold people accountable. Like, that's what most people are kind of seeing, right? They've seen Eric Bieniemy confront guys on the sidelines, and for the fans, that makes them feel good that, hey, he's not taking any crap, right? But he also said he wanted somebody who'd bring new ideas every day. He spent 1 year as the offensive coordinator at UCLA under Deshaun Foster, 1 year as the OC under a defensive coach in Washington, and then this most recent year as the running back coach under Ben Johnson. Is that the experience he needed to come in and bring new ideas every day?
I doubt it. I'm
old enough. If you picked up what I was laying down.
I'm old enough to remember the same people who are calling Eric Bieniemy the solution now are the ones calling the problem 3 years ago.
Hang on, because I want you to expand on that, because Curtis said that same thing today, and I said, do you have a friend or people in the media or wherever that you remember were like, Bieniemy's got to go, that are now saying Bieniemy's got to be here? Because I hear lots of people who said he had to go. I hear lots of people who say he's the guy. I don't know that they're the same people saying these different things.
My answer is yes. Okay. I have seen it. But you asked, Jeff, why they're bringing Eric Bieniemy back. I think it's really simple. Like, they're bringing him back because of what he's already provided, not because he's going to provide something new. And sure, coaches can grow. I'm sure he's learned a thing or two from Ben Johnson. But Eric Bieniemy is not being brought in to lead an offensive makeover and get up in front of the class on the whiteboard and say, here's what I learned from Ben Johnson. Here's what we're going to be doing this next year. He's being brought in because of his skill set that he already brought to the Chiefs. And to me, it's a reminder, not a revelation, a reminder of who's in charge of this Chiefs offense, and that's not going to change, and that was never going to change no matter who they brought in as offensive coordinator. And the similarity here, no matter if you had brought in a name you had never heard of coming to the Chiefs, a name who you might have really wanted because they've had offensive success elsewhere, or Eric Bieniemy, the similarity in all those situations is this is Andy Reid's offense. And that's what this should remind people of whenever they want to criticize the offensive coordinator, whether they want to praise the offensive coordinator at times. The praise and criticism should belong at the guy in charge, which is always going to be Andy Reid as long as he's here.
Jeff, you use the term safe. I mean, I do think it's safe on the surface. I think it's safe for Andy Reid right away. He knows the guy. Everybody settles back into their role. Eric knows where the coffee maker is and where to get lunch. And I don't mean that he's going to get in that for Andy. I just mean you don't have to break the guy in on everything that you do. He knows all of Andy Reid's, wants.
Cheeseburger jokes.
Yeah, exactly. He knows when to giggle, all those kind of things. But I actually don't think it's safe, right? For the things we're talking about here, like I think it feels safe. I think it appears safe to him, but I think it sets up. It means there's no margin next year. Like this guy knows you, you know him. You've made this decision. You're stating that we just need to do what we've always done and do it better. Right. And, I think that hastens the frustration of fans if it doesn't work. Right. If you would go get a Mike McDaniel like the Chargers did, and it's like not working, you're like, well, is this a two head coaches butting heads? Is this Mike McDaniel? Like you could tolerate, like, okay, they tried something different with Mike McDaniel. They fired him after 1 year. Now they're going in and getting Eric Bieniemy. Like, I don't think you get that tolerance when you make the decision for Eric Bieniemy. I think the fans' outrage will grow faster if it doesn't work with Eric Bieniemy in place. There's no like, well, we got to get used to what he's doing. We got to, we're still figuring out each other, right? Does that make it more dangerous than maybe Andy Reid realizes?
Yeah, from that standpoint, but I'm saying it's safe for Andy Reid. I don't think Andy Reid's thinking about all the things you're talking about because Andy Reid's past the point of caring about that stuff. I mean, it's if we can't agree on anything about Andy Reid at this stage of his career is that he knows he's got the Chiefs and Clark Hunt and this Chiefs kingdom, all that stuff under his thumb. He's the best coach this franchise has ever had. He's the most winningest coach. He's going to the Hall of Fame. And once you reach a certain point as a coach, you don't worry about that stuff. You worry about what you want to do. That's the dangerous place for him because I think the risky move would have been to say, let me go and try to figure out how to make this better. Let me try to get some new ideas in here. Somebody who I can bounce ideas off of, who can challenge me. Eric Bieniemy is going to be a positive. I want to make that clear. I think he brings something to the table. I think that was lost when he left. I think there's a lot of things that he brings that are going to be positives. But I don't think yelling at people, getting in people's faces, making sure people aren't committing penalties, it was the biggest problem with this team's offense. The biggest problem was the play calling and the scheme itself. And that's not going to change. And so for me, that's what's disconcerting because you're right. Mike McDaniel going to the Chargers, that's a risky move. Let's bring in a guy here who is completely different than Jim Harbaugh's ever had as an OC. But I like what he does. Let me see what he can do. We've seen Nick Sirianni make risky moves, bringing in guys that he's been his buddies and going and getting guys from the outside. And it's worked when he's done outside stuff, and it hasn't worked when he's done inside stuff. I think Andy wants people around Andy that make him feel good and that he knows. And I think that's what this is about.
I think there's a couple of comments I want to get to here. First of all, I think this one, Mahomes has been going downhill since his big blow up with the EB season. I don't know how this is the solution, right? Well, I mean, you kind of say two things there. One, he's been going downhill since he left. So how's this the solution? I think a lot of people say, well, that's the problem is he left. You can't deny that statistically Patrick Mahomes has gone down.
Yeah, that's so short-sighted, though. I mean, because I hear this a lot, so I do think it's worth addressing. First of all, Travis Kelce was still in his prime when Eric Bieniemy was here. He's no longer in his prime. There was, 1 year without Tyreek Hill?
And they were the number one offense, and he threw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. I mean, it has listen, I'm not saying there aren't other causes. There absolutely are, and we can get to them for sure, because I think there's more to it. There's a couple others here. Kudos to Mahomes for realizing that Bieniemy brought a lot of value to him, and the roster for being a red ass for the details. People are ignoring that. I mean, I do think it should be pointed out. Patrick Mahomes, I think we all agree this move would not be happening if Patrick Mahomes said, he ain't coming. Right? Like,
yeah. I mean, look, I mean, his statements last week, it described Eric Bieniemy, but they described a combination of Eric Bieniemy and something else. And Eric Bieniemy, I agree with Jeff, and it needs to be underscored. He's bringing something valuable to this franchise. I mean, I think it's not just the word accountability has been so overused these past few days. But Eric Bieniemy is the loudest voice at training camp, but in the most critical voice as well at training camp. I still joke about it all the time among those of us who go to practice every day. I've seen a moment where Demarcus Robinson caught the ball and he's literally fading out of bounds as he catches it. And Eric Bieniemy, it was the year that Demarcus Robinson seemed to be going backwards every time he caught the ball. And Eric Bieniemy is still screaming at him as he's falling out of bounds, "Get upfield!" Like, somebody needs to do that. Somebody needs to. That to me is what this whole accountability cliche is. But there's something I think that's more valuable to this specific iteration where the NFL is right now that Eric Bieniemy will bring, which is he will tell Andy Reid to run the damn ball. He will say, you've got to run the ball and you've got to stick to the run. And I think they'll be more creative in the way they run the ball. But like I said, I think that's the piece that Patrick Mahomes described. I also think the other piece that Patrick Mahomes described is valuable as well, which is he said, hey, our tape is out there. People know what's coming now, because when you have this kind of success, people like to study what you do, and therefore your tape gets out there. And he said that, in the big moments of the game, the stuff that they've been relying on as crutches over the past few years hasn't worked as well because people know what's coming. I don't know that Eric Bieniemy is the guy that's going to solve that aspect of the problem.
Yeah, I want to bring up one other. Dom says, remember, Soren called for EB to leave in favor of Nagy. Keep that in mind. I said he was going to leave, and I said it was going to happen, and it did happen. Just as, like Sam said, Nagy's going to leave, and it is happening. Like, there's a difference. I also believe that it was time for Eric Bieniemy to leave, and I said that at that time, and I will stand by it. I don't think just keeping Eric Bieniemy around for the last 3 years would have worked. It was time. Now, maybe the break does them all good. Or maybe it lasts for 1 year. Maybe it lasts forever. But there was friction. Let's not make any mistake about it. It was not everybody sitting around in a circle singing Kumbaya with what was going on. And so there was definitely friction that was going on. The writing was on the wall. A number of us saw it, that he was going to be leaving, just as Matt Nagy is leaving. I mean, it seems to be there is a bit of a shelf life here, Jeff, with that position, at least with these two guys who clearly aspire. We know Eric Bieniemy was interviewing all over the place for head coaching jobs. They aspire to get head coaching jobs. There does seem to be there's a limit to how long you can be in this. The phrase was used today, Robin to Batman, right? Like, you definitely ain't Superman next to Batman. Yeah. You're Robin, right? Like, you're going to be the sidekick to Andy Reid. There's only so long people want to do that.
Yeah, especially when they're harboring ambitions of being a head coach. Now, I will say one of the pluses of Bieniemy coming back is he's had the opportunity to go out there and try to showcase himself as a play caller, as a more dynamic, offensive-minded head coaching candidate, and he didn't succeed in that. He didn't succeed in Washington doing that. He didn't succeed at UCLA doing that. And so I've known Eric Bieniemy since I was 18, 19 years old. So I go back a long way with him. I have no problem saying this. I think he's very well aware of who he is, and I think when he left here, he wanted to show that. And I think once he saw he couldn't be that, now he's coming back with a different perspective. And he's probably going to be a lot more comfortable in that role of, Andy's calling the plays. I'm the guy who's going to be the tough guy. As Sam said, get the run game going guy. And that's not a bad thing. And I don't know if Mike Kafka would have been any better. I think he probably, if you're looking for somebody who would have had more new ideas, and I think someone mentioned this, like Bieniemy can bring some new ideas. I think being with Ben Johnson for 1 year doesn't give you all this new encyclopedia of plays to go pull out of. I think Mike Kafka, having been with Brian Daboll, probably got a little more of an education on the differences in what Daboll does and what Andy's been doing. But I think, again, it all folds back into the same issue, which is, do we really expect this offense to look much different than it did before? Even if Andy is being told to run the football more, I hope they're finding better runners to run the football. So just calling for runs isn't enough. It's like you have to have the talent to do it, which is also part of the problem. He wants certain kinds of backs. Yeah. And so I think that's all part of what they have to figure out.
By the way, Dumps is the combination of Reed, Mahomes, EB is what works. Okay. I mean, we'll see. Pat says Kafka would have had my support. So I mean, there's another. I don't think they even had a shot because I don't think Kafka had any interest. I mean, I don't think he wanted to come here. Like I said, be the understudy. So I will point out, like, Eric Bieniemy does not come back here after a successful head coaching stint somewhere or as a successful offensive coordinator. He lost positions at every stop. Okay, he went from OC in the NFL to OC in college football to running backs coach in the NFL. I'm not saying the man he's got his resume's fine. He warrants getting this job, and he's probably he is for what Andy Reid. He's clearly what Andy Reid wants. So Andy Reid thinks he's the best guy for the job. But Mike Kafka never really gave him the time of day by most people's account, right? And so the idea that they're hiring the hottest offensive mind out there, they're hiring the running backs coach from Chicago. Let's be clear. I just want to set the expectations because I think a lot of people think, that's why we keep talking about. I'm with what Sam, you said, that this is scheme is what we're talking about here. And we're not like, I think it was a schematic issue. Eric Bieniemy or Matt Nagy's fault, Andy Reid's fault. I don't know. Don't really care. It needs to get better. And the question is Eric Bieniemy the guy to make the scheme better? I don't know that they necessarily need someone to bark. I know everyone's tired of the Juwan Taylor, false starts and illegal formations. He's not going to be back anyway. So that's not a position that needed to be filled, the Juwan Taylor up his ass spot. Yeah,
and I'll also point out, so I looked up penalties because I think I've just have heard that narrative so much.
They're not the same, right?
In 2018, EB's first year as the OC, they led the NFL in offensive penalties. Next year, they were 22nd. Next year, they had the 6th most. Next year, they had the 4th most. Like, they've committed their fair share of penalties over the year. This hasn't suddenly been a thing this last year. And to me, that goes back to my biggest takeaway from the Eric Bieniemy thing is it's just a reminder of who's in charge of the offense. And this is Andy Reid in charge of the offense, which is why you see that consistency and that sort of thing. And so, if the change happens in terms of scheme, in terms of play design and play call, it's going to have to come from the collaborative room and most importantly from Andy Reid. And he's going to have to realize that when you go 6-11, it should slap you in the face that you need to change. And if that doesn't come from your OC position, it's got to come from you.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. All right, well, I want to talk about whether or not this is going to be a success, or at least what success looks like in this. We'll also talk about Matt Nagy after you hear from our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. All right, how about it, Jeff? What does success in hiring Eric Bieniemy look like? How would you measure? How are we going to measure and say this was a successful move by the Kansas City Chiefs?
Well, I think one is just if the accountability factor is there. If you see, if Xavier Worthy catches a pass and doesn't step out of bounds as soon as it hits his hands, I think that's a big thing. I think if the penalties are less, if the running game is more as a bigger factor and is more dynamic and creative, Eric Bieniemy, I think he probably deserves some success. DeAndre Swift was already a good back, but that rookie they had in Chicago, Monangai, the way he evolved, I think that's a credit to what Eric Bieniemy can bring to the table. There's going to be new backs in here. Probably a rookie back, probably a free agent, and so some new faces coming in, getting them acclimated. But I think that's probably the biggest thing I would say. The biggest success for this team would be moving more towards what the NFL is today, which is having a more complete run game to help your quarterback, to help your defense. It's not a surprise that you look at the 4 teams still playing. Probably only one has two. The Seahawks and the Rams have a good running game, but a lot of these teams are relying on a complete team to win, and they're playing complementary football. They're not out there trying to, throw the football all over the place outside of the Rams. And so I think getting more into that frame of mind of like, I can't just out genius people anymore. I have to be more creative with what I do, and I have to rely more on my talent and my ability to run the football to make things happen. I think if they become more of that kind of team, it's success.
What do you think? How will we measure? How will we go if that was a successful hire, Sam?
Yeah, this is a tricky one because I don't want to just look at points per game and yards per game. I mean, everything that I've said previously, I don't think it's going to be Eric Bieniemy's fault if this scheme does not improve. I don't think it's going to be Eric Bieniemy needs to be a head coach next year if the scheme does improve. I think that I know that this is a collaborative room and that Andy Reid does what Andy Reid wants to do most. So what can Eric Bieniemy bring and what can he make it a success? What really stuck out with me was a specific quote that Patrick Mahomes used, which he said, I want to get back to that winning culture of being accountable to each other and going out there and playing great football every single day, practice or game. That's a quarterback saying he didn't think the team practiced well last year and that he thinks the game results are a result of those practice habits. And so I think that's where Eric Bieniemy can help most, is the Chiefs can return to being a good practice team. And those, I mean, it's a cliche that you are what you practice, but it's absolutely true. I mean, you pay attention to the details in practice, suddenly that story I told about DeMarcus Robinson, that is a coach paying attention to the small details in practice. That's the stuff that can show up in a game. And so to me, I think his success is going to be hard to measure in the ways that I like to measure success with data, but there's other ways that he certainly can improve this team.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be back in the playoffs for one. Right. Like, I think that's, I do think statistically they've got to move up. They fell to 21. They fell from 10 to 21 in yards in 3 games, which, I don't think just getting back to 14 is good enough. I think they need to get back into the top 10. I don't know that it has to be right away. There are personnel things. I mean, it's going to be, there's not one thing. Hey, here's the number, circle it. That's what equals success. But back to the postseason is I think without a doubt part of it. I don't know how that's not.
Part of his success, though. Like, if the Chiefs make the postseason, is the first person you're going to think of
because it's not. No, I'm not going to put it all on Eric Bieniemy. I'll just say this wasn't the fix, right? And Eric Bieniemy, it's entirely possible for Eric Bieniemy to do an outstanding job and them still suck, right? Like, I don't know that he's the right answer. Like, I will tell you, this would not be my hire. Let me be clear. I would look for. I think Andy Reid needs to evolve. I think he needs to move into a Dick Vermeil role where he's more of a CEO. Right. And I think he needed to look for somebody that's been a dynamic play caller and play designer to come in and be a part of it. And he can work with it. But I think Andy Reid has reached a point in his career. I had somebody, call into the radio show. So you got to hold his feet to the when somebody can hold Andy Reid's feet to the fire. They're not. Okay. Because he's got 60, 80 million more dollars coming from the Hunt family. That's not how it works. He's earned what he's gotten. But I think as I look at it, I think the offense is stale. Okay, I think there are questions about whether or not Andy Reid has the right play designs. If he was listening to Matt Nagy or he was giving it to Matt Nagy, I don't really care. But I this team has Patrick Mahomes. So I don't know how, again, it won't be necessarily that he failed, but this is a move that's part of the picture of getting this team back to the playoffs. And Sam, you were the one who said, I don't know that you can have a year out of the playoffs with Patrick Mahomes. So I don't know how they can not be in the playoffs again. Change the most important piece between the quarterback and the head coach, and you would call that, no, it was a success.
I wouldn't call it a success. I'm just saying if the Chiefs get back to the playoffs, I'm not going to say, "Oh, Eric Bieniemy." The reason the reason they're back is because of the OC, and vice versa too. If they don't make the playoffs, I'm not going to say it's strictly because they didn't change the OC, because I think that the importance of the OC in this organization is limited by the guy who's in charge. I don't think that this is a universal power offensive coordinator to where the offensive coordinator can change the scheme. I don't think the smartest offensive mind in football could have walked in here and Andy Reid would have said, "I'm changing my scheme and we're going to go with what you said."
I agree, but this is the movie made.
It is, but
the object is to get to the playoffs. And I agree with you. You can maybe miss when all the stars line up the playoffs once, maybe twice. Again, it's not a referendum on Eric Bieniemy. I'm not saying what makes Eric Bieniemy the human being, Eric Bieniemy the coach. What makes hiring Eric Bieniemy a success? And it's going back to the play. It absolutely going back to the playoffs is a part of the equation. If they do not, this move was not a success, as were many others, I'm sure, will have not been successes. But I don't know how we could talk about, like, you have Mahomes, you got to get to the playoffs, and this is the major move you're making, and you fall short. And we go, yeah, but that was still good.
Yeah, but
I know that's not what you're saying, but that's what I want to underscore. It can't be a success without being in the postseason. I'm sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
Yeah, but that also suggests that this move was made in an attempt to better the offense. I think we have to remember the context that Matt Nagy left. If he was fired and then Andy Reid made this move, then I would look at it more from the standpoint you're looking at it like, okay, he's trying to upgrade the position. I think when Matt Nagy left, he was like, I want to find somebody who kind of can be my Matt Nagy now, be my Doug Peterson, whoever it is. Like, all these guys are under the same umbrella, which is they've been around Andy for a long time. So I stopped short of saying playoffs with Eric Bieniemy as OC is success, because I don't think this move was made with the idea of let's make the offense better. I think it was made with the standpoint of, like, let me find somebody who I'm comfortable with, who knows what I want to do. And I think there's very few coaches, I was thinking about this a second ago, who get to Andy Reid's age and his level of success, who are willing to make the kind of changes we're talking about making. I think that when I think about John Harbaugh, what he did with Lamar Jackson when he showed up, John Harbaugh was about to get fired. He was like, I got this quarterback, that first round pick. Let me just create this whole new offense and just roll with that and see what happens. And he rolled the dice. Andy Reid is, even off 6-11, I don't think he's feeling some sense of desperation or urgency to create some kind of hold on to his job. I think if it goes south again, he's like, okay, I'm done. And so that's the real danger here is he at a point in his career where he feels like I got to make something happen.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm not asking the question for what makes Andy Reid think it's a success.
Yeah.
Like another year of payday. And, like, I'm asking the question, what measuring as a fan, as I think an owner, like, do you think Clark Hunt's cool with, like, hey, let's just get you and all your boys another round of checks? I don't. He shouldn't.
Yeah. Because
you're squandering years with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. But I've also seen coaches run this game too. I mean, again, I agree with you. We're talking about two different things. We're talking about what's good for the Chiefs and what's good for Andy Reid. Right? That's the problem. It's like we're asking, I guess, one question. It's two different questions here.
And look, and I'll say there was a comment about, the reset year. Yeah, I think it's a reset year on the cap. But I don't think when you run back, assuming Patrick Mahomes is healthy, Patrick Mahomes, the highest paid center, guard, a first-round pick left tackle, a second-round pick left guard, a $15 million right tackle, a first and a second-round wide out, all the things that they have, you're resetting the cap. You're not tanking, okay? So some people can't discern the difference between the two. Let me be clear. You're not tanking, right? You're still going out and trying to win. You're just not pouring 27 and 28 resources into 26. Right? You're not pushing 26 cap into 27 and 28 to push this team further, right? Because, frankly, the team that won the Super Bowl 2 years ago shouldn't have won, but they were good enough to get in. They got hot at the right time. They made it happen. That to me is where that's what 26 will look like. If they would win a championship, they'd be winning it a year. And really, even the year before, they were kind of a year early because of how young they were, right? Like, so you just got to be good enough to get there when you have Patrick Mahomes. And I think they will be good enough. I think their talent is good enough. Maybe that's the battery and backwards. Is the talent good enough to be a playoff team when you consider that they're going to add a draft class to this, knowing what they're going to lose? Is this team good enough to be a playoff team based on its talent, Sam?
Who plays quarterback?
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, they're good enough
Okay.
to make the playoffs.
Yes.
But
Yeah, go ahead.
well, there is a larger point here that I thought, and I wrote this a story that's publishing tomorrow morning, is that when you look at the teams left in the playoffs, or let's look at it this way, the teams that invest in the quarterback position, the Rams are number 1 in cap hit for quarterback this year, but numbers 2 through 9 did not make the playoffs this year. Usually the model is you've got to have either a rookie quarterback contract and or someone like a Tom Brady situation. And I know there's conspiracy about Tom, but the fact is, cap wise, he was not charging a lot of dollars against the cap. You look at the 4 teams that were projected before the year to make the AFC, to win the most games in the AFC by Vegas. It was the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills, and the Bengals. All 4 of them are done. 3 of them didn't make the playoffs. And the similarity is they all paid their quarterback a lot of money. And so, yes, it's typical that filling the rest of your roster is tough. That's the design of this league. It's why this league is better designed than MLB is because this is supposed to be tough, even with the great quarterback. But the other thing it does is while it makes the ceiling tough, it raises your floor, of course, when you have the quarterback. Because the other thing that's the combination of this is of the 16 teams that will pick in the top half of the first round next year, only 3 of them are paying the 16 top quarterbacks investment teams, only 3 of them pick in the top 10. So it's rare that when you're looking for this other way to fill out your roster, you have the sort of resources to throw at it that the Chiefs do this year. So are they a playoff team? Do they have enough talent? Yes, because they have Patrick Mahomes, but also because their avenue to solving these problems is a draft and draft capital that most teams in their situation do not have the luxury of having.
Matt Nagy, not going to be the head coach in Tennessee, Jeff. Did he overplay his hand? Did he make the right move? I mean, there certainly didn't seem to be an effort by Matt Nagy to stay. I mean, I think it was like both sides like, okay, we're going our separate directions. What do you make of him not getting the job in Tennessee?
I don't believe he overplayed his hand. I think he took a shot. I think he realized, okay, it's a good time to go back out and see what's out there. We just talked about just how much sway you get being Andy Reid's offensive coordinator. And I think the word is out that it's not like being Sean McVay's offensive coordinator and not like being Kyle Shanahan's offensive coordinator. You actually get a little less juice for that. And so I understand the need to go out and try to sell yourself and take some opportunities that will allow you to probably better promote your opportunities, create more opportunities for yourself by promoting yourself. I don't think it was a mistake that he did it. I think he wondered how long Andy Reid was going to stick around. Andy is, and Andy can do what he wants. I don't want to make it sound like Andy's a bad guy here, but I'm sure Nagy would have preferred to know, hey, I got 3 years left. And Matt Nagy might have stuck around for that. But having it being open-ended, that can't be something that was appealing to him. And you look around the NFL and you see some of these guys getting opportunities. I mean, Liam Cohen, no one was talking about him a couple of years ago, and now he's a hot thing, right? Kellen Moore was in Philadelphia. Now he's got a job. It's not a great job in New Orleans, but he became a hot candidate. I mean, and now he walked out into a field where there were tons of head coaches out there who, if they weren't more accomplished, they were just sexier names. I mean, Robert Saleh is the kind of guy, if you've ever been around him, he can walk into a room and take it over. And he's coming off a season where his defense lost Nick Bosa and Fred Warner and all these guys, and they were competitive. Matt Nagy's coming off a season where his offense, with Patrick Mahomes, the team was 6-11. And the offense was 21st overall. I mean, I just think that he picked the wrong time to come out, but he couldn't have known that John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott, Mike Tomlin, all these other people were going to be in the water as well.
Yeah. What do you think, Sam? What's your reaction?
He had to bet on himself at some point because the offensive coordinator position in Kansas City is not. It's everything I said. I mean, like it's not a secret that Andy Reid is the offensive coordinator in Kansas City. In which case, when you're another team, you're not going to credit him for the success. But then when the offense goes south, you're going to say you couldn't fix that. You had Patrick Mahomes there. You couldn't fix that. So I think at some point he had to take the leap of faith in himself. And I actually thought, like, even in retrospect, I think going back and look at it, you say you're very close with the GM elsewhere, and why not take a shot when that team's got the opening? But I think, and I said this before, I think this could be a situation where it's best for both sides. It's best for the Chiefs and it's best for Matt Nagy for separation. Same as somebody said and apparently criticized you for saying about Eric Bieniemy 3 years ago. Like, that is not saying that Eric Bieniemy sucks. If you said that 3 years ago, it's not saying that the Chiefs can do better. It's just like it becomes we're Sean McDermott's on this list. It becomes time where it's time.
Yeah,
it was time in Philadelphia for Andy Reid to move on. It was best for both
John
sides.
Harbaugh. It's like this happens. You know, I don't understand like the jilted lover aspect of like, you know, the reaction to this. Like, is this the first year of watching football? Like, what are we? Is this intro to football we're dealing with here? Like, what are we doing? Like, guys cycle out and back. Bill Belichick got shit canned in Cleveland, and he deserved it. Okay? Obviously, it didn't mean he couldn't coach. Didn't mean he couldn't succeed again. And by the way,
the Patriots are better for him having left.
And by the way,
the most recent time.
Yeah. And you're being criticized about like, oh, Sam's a Matt Nagy guy. No, we're pointing out that Matt Nagy can coach. He's not a dunce. And like, so the people that are like, Matt Nagy's the problem, there was a same group, maybe the same people, that were saying Eric Bieniemy was the problem, right? That was the word 3 years ago. En route to a Super Bowl, by the way, right? They were blaming him for the Bengals loss, right? It just snowballs and snowballs. It's got to be something. Somebody's got to be fired. You know what it is? 32 teams are competing. Only one is a success. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I do think it will be interesting to see where Matt Nagy does land, right? Like, because I think I
agree. Yeah,
I think he wants, and I'm not so sure. And maybe I missed him because I've been working on some other stuff tonight. But he hasn't landed anywhere, right? And the Titans haven't landed an OC yet. I won't be shocked if he's the Titans OC.
Yeah, I won't either.
Right? Because I think there's clearly an affinity for him. And
someone said Washington was the place he had his eye on. I'd heard that.
Why wouldn't you go there and work with Jaden Daniels? I think it'd be a good spot if they'll have him. Like, has Baltimore landed their OC yet? I mean, Coach Lamar Jackson. I mean, I think there are a lot of spots that could be a good landing for him. And look,
there could be an opening in Buffalo too. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
we don't know for sure. I imagine Buffalo's going to go with an offensive-minded coach, but those other ones you mentioned are defensive-minded coaches. Why not a year in Washington, then a year at UCLA, and then a year with the Bears again?
Yeah, I mean, that would be the way to double all the way back around. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll hear from our friends at Frontier Justice.
This episode of Red, Gold, and Bold is brought to you by Frontier Justice, where freedom is a lifestyle grounded in safety, responsibility, and respect. With locations in Lee Summit, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, and Jenks, Oklahoma, Frontier Justice offers firearms retail, a premier indoor shooting range, and training all under one roof. Whether you're new to shooting or a seasoned pro, you'll find expert staff, top-tier gear, and a strong sense of community. Faith, family, freedom. That's what Frontier Justice stands for. Visit frontier-justice.com to learn more.
Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's talk a little bit about the coaching staff and the other news. ChadO'Shea, wide receiver coach, was the wide receiver coach and passing game coordinator, the Cleveland Browns. Jeff, what do you make of this decision? 53 years old, not new to the game. I think a decade in New England as the wide receiver coach previous to his time in Cleveland. There might have been a one-year stop somewhere in there. I'm forgetting. Miami, an accomplished coach of wide receivers and working in the passing game. What do you make of this hire?
Well, he's a respected name. He's a guy who's been around for a long time, as you said, and when you're in New England that long, that the expectation of that offense is you are very precise in what you do and very detail oriented. And so that's a positive for people like Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, whoever else ends up being a part of that receiving core. I mean, he is, Connor Embry. Look, we all know that was more about who his dad was and Andy trying to do a guy's solid and open the door for him. It happens all the time in the NFL. I don't have a problem with it. I see it as being just a routine part of doing business in this league. But ChadO'Shea brings a lot more to the table and hopefully can bring that receiving core up to a level that is more promising because, I don't think Travis Kelce is going to be back. And they got to figure out who's going to be reliable, who is going to be the number one target here. Mahomes is not going to be able to be around and throw into these guys in the offseason, even though he probably wants to be able to in the way he has in the past. So that even makes it more incumbent that whoever is coaching that position is really drilling these guys and making sure they're doing the right thing. So I think it's a smart hire. I don't know how much of a voice he'll have when it comes to play calling. I don't know what this means for Joe Blameyer, who Andy Reid's always trying to find a way to push his career to a higher level. But it's a positive. I think it's a good move.
Yeah.
Well, not always, because he could have promoted him to the OC.
yeah. Trust me, that's a whole other podcast for that one.
Well, I mean, how does it fit with Blameyer, who is the passing game coordinator, with the background that O'Shea has? I mean, what do you make of this? There's potentially duplication there. I mean,
yeah, but I think in this situation, like, you can't have enough good ideas in the room. And, these assistant coaches come to the podium a lot. I certainly chat with a lot of people in that building, and it's hard to find people who get praised more, who feel like he's a really smart mind already in that building. When I'm talking about Joe Blameyer, this to me, when I look at ChadO'Shea, I look at it as the bigger picture, which is the offensive coordinator is one of 5 changes to the offensive coaching staff. I reported a couple more tonight when an assistant running backs coach is going to be gone, another offensive assistant. You've got your wide receiver coach, you got your OC, and you got your head running backs coach as well. Like, that's 5 changes. And I think Patrick Mahomes was right when he identified what needs to change. He mentioned the accountability and he mentioned fresh ideas. Eric Bieniemy is that accountability piece of it. So where do the fresh ideas come from? Is it this combination of these other changes that you've made in your room at running backs, at wide receiver, at assistant running back, by maybe your own head coach, your own passing game coordinator with Joe Blameyer? Like, to me, ChadO'Shea has to be part of that mix now. And so does whoever ends up being the running backs coach. He says, like, that collaboration needs to account for the other half, because Patrick Mahomes wasn't wrong when he mentioned that it's not just the accountability piece, it's also the fresh idea piece. And I think Eric Bieniemy does bring clear value, but I don't think he brings everything that the Chiefs need. So can ChadO'Shea be part of the everything else that they need?
I want to read some of this in the comment section, because somebody asked a question about how much the position coaches really matter. I think Ben Williams asked it, and it matters a lot. It matters a lot. Who's coaching the quarterbacks, the DBs, the linebackers? There are guys who coach receivers in this league who are super talented at getting the most out of receivers. There's a guy named Jerry Sullivan who's been around for a long time. He's retired, and wherever he went, receivers did really well. Going back to when David Boston was, before he got steroid crazy, he was the guy that helped him out. He's coached Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in college. Antoine Randall with the Lions, and you saw what Jamison Williams became there. You saw what who's the 14? Amon-Ra St. Brown became there, and you go to Chicago, how Rome Odunze is playing in his first season there. I mean, it matters who's coaching these guys. And it makes a huge difference. And Eric Bieniemy, as a running backs coach, had a lot of success wherever he went. So I don't underestimate what ChadO'Shea could mean, especially when you think about who they were putting out receiver in New England when Tom Brady was still there. Because there were a lot of dudes like Julian Edelman, like Danny Amendola, like who was their lacrosse player they had. Guys who were not big names who became very productive with him coaching them.
Yeah, I think the position coach does matter a lot. And listen, I don't like the tone and tenor of this. the way Tommy put this, but he said if O'Shea puts together 2 complete sentences without looking terrified, that will be an improvement over the previous wide receiver coach. Connor Emery never looked comfortable up there. And I do think it's hard to lead a group when, frankly, I mean, there's truth in what he said. I mean, it was not an impressive, did not carry the room.
When players see that. Players know.
Yeah, of course they do. Of course they do. I mean, it was notable. I mean, I'm trying to think, all the other guys, have some element of carrying the room, to some of them being outstanding. You're like, when Dave Merritt talks, you're like, all right, I'll follow this guy anywhere, right? Steve Spagnuolo, you see where he's just down to earth, real, honest. You see why guys have that, and there's also other guys that just have decades of success in the NFL, right? They may not be as dynamic, but they have the resume. Connor Emery didn't have the resume, nor did he carry the room. So it was a difficult spot that was there. All right, let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit about the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, not only the Bills lose, Jeff, but Josh Allen had a bad day. Is that it? Are we done? No more? Rex Ryan midseason was talking about how Josh Allen's the best quarterback in football. And
not midseason, after the game. After this game.
Oh, did he after this game? I didn't hear that.
Everyone on that ESPN panel said he was the best player in the NFL.
I object to that wholeheartedly. What is it in your mind? Done? Can we stop having that conversation right now, or no? Is it still relevant?
I guess I always looked at it I think it's a straw man conversation. It's one that if a guy on ESPN says it, that doesn't mean it's gospel. I think if you polled 100 people, I'd probably say 95, 97, 98 would say Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the NFL. I think Josh Allen is very comparable to him, but he's not as accomplished. I think they have very similar skills. I don't think it's ridiculous to say Josh Allen's in the same class as Patrick Mahomes. I think he's second to Mahomes. I think probably Joe Burrow's third and Lamar's fourth of the guys who we think are the stars of that position. But I would never say Josh Allen's number one. It's just he's got to have more success, got to win got to win a championship. The problem with what happened to him on Saturday, and I was at that game, it was the first time you could say in a long time that he was the reason they lost, right? There were other factors in the game. Josh Allen, for the most part, has not been a reason for the Bills losing playoff games. It's been their defense. It's been Sean McDermott. The guy hadn't had a turnover in his last 6 postseason games, and he had 25 touchdown passes and 4 picks in the postseason coming in. He's played pretty high-level football, and he's won an MVP. But until he wins championships, you can never really say he's better than Mahomes.
I would disagree. I would, I don't think he's in the same. I'm not going to spend any time arguing about it, but I don't think he's in the same class because of this, and not this game, because of his inability to advance. This was a rough one. And it doesn't mean that there isn't a rough one out there for Patrick Mahomes to let everybody.
Oh, he's got some rough ones
in the postseason.
Yeah,
he hasn't played well in Super Bowls either. Yeah.
He has until he had to, and then he did. Right? I agree. He wasn't having a great game against the 49ers. Had thrown 2 interceptions, and then he made every play the rest of the way and won the game. But I do think winning matters.
Of course, yeah.
But he's not solely responsible for the winning. That's the myth of the quarterback position.
He's most responsible though. And I don't want to make a big deal out of one game. This was a game the Bills could not lose. This was a just don't screw it up game, and you win this game. Just screw it up a little and you win this game. They screwed it up a lot and still were in overtime.
Yeah,
they lost it.
Yes, they lost the regulation turnover battle 4-1. They're still in overtime, and I don't think this should be an indictment on everything that Josh Allen is. But I do agree with Soren. This is a major part of the gap in his resume is his inability to come through in the easiest AFC playoff field that he's ever entered.
Yes,
and I also think that if CJ Stroud's going to catch all the sort of heat for his performance on Sunday, and he should, let's not feel sorry for Josh Allen. He's responsible for his performance.
You think someone's feeling sorry
on Saturday? Oh, I've heard tons of sentiment. I feel bad for Josh Allen for this, But my point is,
but is that because he's not advancing or because of how he played?
I think people like the way he warriors up, and when it falls apart like that, it's tough to watch. I mean, you see a guy who clearly puts a lot into it, hurt for not being able to get.
It seems like a very likable guy as well. Does a lot.
Yes.
The kids' charity stuff, I think, is like a terrific thing. I can understand rooting for Josh Allen,
100%.
But
and I can understand. That's why I say I can understand feeling sorry for him. But it does not prohibit me from saying he's not in Patrick Mahomes' class. And
if you say he's not in his class, like if we're grading on a scale of 1 to 100, like how do you grade Mahomes versus him?
I don't think,
like they're both A quarterbacks.
I'm fine if they're up there. And you've said it, Jeff, and we're going to see it that other people are going to win championships, right? It's going to happen. Matt Stafford won. Matt Stafford had one, and who's the other one that happened? Well, Jalen Hurts has won one, and Tom Brady won one.
How long did John Elway win a championship?
Listen, and I think Josh Allen's career is paralleling that, and I think hopefully they'll get an offensive guy paired with him, and he'll have some success. Hopefully, whenever the Chiefs don't, he'll have success. But my point just is, I think it's okay for him to not be in Patrick Mahomes' class. That doesn't make him zero. It doesn't mean he sucks. It just means I believe that these playoffs, Josh Allen was the only guy, and I would listen to Matt Stafford, I guess, that could close the gap and say, okay, he's right there on the same level. We can take Mahomes higher, but he's in the same group as Patrick Mahomes. Coming in this year, it's guys like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen that if they could kick the door down and win the Super Bowl, then you could say, okay, they're there. Neither one of them did it. I mean, they failed, and that's okay to say they failed, and it's okay to say they're not as good as Patrick Mahomes. Like it's okay to say Ben Roethlisberger was good. Wasn't Tom Brady.
Well, I think the way I look at it, and I look at it in the whole of it, and I think it's very easy to say, here's Josh Allen, here's Patrick Mahomes, or whoever else you want to throw in there, and here's this guy won championships, so he's not as good. This other guy's not as good as him. In reality, Patrick Mahomes walked into a dream setup for a young quarterback with a Hall of Fame coach, Hall of Fame tight end, Hall of Fame receiver, Hall of Fame defensive tackle,
playoff team.
And eventually one of the best defensive coordinators in the history of football.
Well, we're not
Josh Allen walked into a situation
he's
with a team that had not won. What?
But he's there now.
He's going to be third.
I get that. That's not what I'm saying. Like what I'm saying is Josh Allen had to work his way up to a place where he could actually have opportunities for championship. Let me ask you this. How many championships do you think?
I don't understand why that means he's as good as Mahomes or he's on the same level.
It means individually. We're talking about as accomplished or individual talent. He's vastly lesser than Patrick Mahomes as talent?
Not vastly. He's not
vastly.
They're he can do the exact same stuff. He just let
me tell you something that stood out to me.
Because of
him. Three times on third down late in that game, in the fourth quarter overtime, the Bills' 3rd and 7+ play was a wide receiver screen. They took the ball out of his hands and said, let's just try and one was a running back screen. Let's just try and screen our way to the first down. And I thought, how can you have Josh Allen? And look, part of that is play calling stuff, but part of that is like Joe Brady decided that having Josh Allen make a play was not their best option. I cannot imagine the Chiefs doing that with Mahomes, throwing a wide receiver screen on third. They did it 3 times late in that game.
Well, I think that's also the talent they have at receiver too. Is not. I mean, they were out there with some guys. They lost 2 receivers to ACL.
The Chiefs won an AFC championship with Marquez Valdes-Scantling as their number 1 wide receiver, and they weren't throwing wide receiver screens in the fourth quarter of that game.
But they also didn't go into that game with 2 guys with ACL tears, right? They were out there with guys who they practiced with, right?
No, Marcus Kemp was playing his first snaps of the season because the injuries they had in game that game.
Which game are you talking about now?
The Bengals AFC championship game that they won to before they beat the Eagles.
Well, I think I also remember that team. Well, let me go back. The point I was going to make is that if Patrick Mahomes' career had stopped, if he stopped winning championships with that AFC championship loss to the Bengals when he had a horrible game, the game Soren's not the one we're referencing. That's the worst game he's probably played in the playoffs.
I agree.
What would the conversation be about Patrick Mahomes right now?
It would be different because he
exactly
championships and another conference championship.
Exactly. My point is that you're at some point playing that position, you're going to have a bad game, and I would argue that Josh Allen has been a stellar postseason performance. In fact, the stats back that up.
I agree.
So And so I think we're cherry picking this moment as to say, well, this is another example why he's not. One, I think most people would not argue that he's not a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. I think I just bristle at the phrase "he's not in his class," which is the same Mahomes, who, by the way, has not been playing lights out in like 3 years. It's up here and Josh Allen is down here. I think they're right here.
I actually think what's been going on around him has dragged him down wherever we want to assign the blame. I think what we saw of their offense the last 3 games shows just how bad things were around him. And so I think that factors into it as well. But I'm fine with your point that we're really arguing over semantics of what the word class means, right? We're both agreeing Mahomes is better.
Yeah.
You know, Mahomes is better. And I think that's where it is. Did the Bills get it right, Sam, in firing McDermott?
It depends on what they do next, because they can do worse than Sean McDermott. But I do think this is related to the conversation we had about EB and Matt Nagy. I think sometimes it's time, and it also proves what I'd said before these playoffs started. There are going to be a lot of narratives on what happens with these teams who have the opportunity without the Chiefs in the playoffs, and it turns out there's going to be a lot of team decisions made too. On what happens, what do you do when you've got the best opportunity you've had to win in the postseason? And McDermott, I don't think McDermott has never been a great game management guy, a great clock management guy. But, there's been times where their defense has given the Chiefs some trouble, more in the regular season than the postseason. But I think when this stuff happens, and I totally agree with Jeff's point that we should not just look at Josh Allen's latest game and make all of our conclusions about Josh Allen. I think that's what happens with Sean McDermott as well, is that you look at this last game, a game they absolutely should have won, and I think you can say, well, they can do better than that. They can do better than that. I'm just saying I think they also can do worse than that. And so to me, the answer to whether or not they got it right is totally dependent on what do you have coming next, because Brian Daboll's name's been thrown out there.
Can I just ask, does that, like, it can't be just time? Like, to me, I think there can be 2 separate things. I think it is time to move on from McDermott. First of all, I thought McDermott's comments post-game were a bad look. I mean, there was no good look to be had. No one has the right words for when you lose. But I think it was time to move on from McDermott. Now there's a new story. Do they get the new hire right? Like, there's an exceptional coach out there. He may not get hired this cycle, but there is somebody out there who's going to be a badass head coach. Your job is to go find them. And so, I do think it was time. I think your point is valid. I think history is going to view it the way you said it, Sam, that if the next guy sucks, I'll be like, why'd you fire McDermott? But I think they've gone as far as they could go with McDermott in Buffalo. I mean, I just think it was like Andy Reid rapping in Philly. It didn't crash and burn with a horrible year, but it crashed and burned the way it always is. I think the fans were ravaged. I mean, I don't know. Jeff, do you?
Jeff, let me phrase the question, pose the question to Jeff this way.
Okay.
How good is that roster around Josh Allen?
It's okay. I mean, it's better than the Chiefs roster right now, but it's not. Look, the defense was 28th in the league in run defense this year. They're getting older in some spots. They have a lot of injuries. The receiver situation is the wide receiver situation is what's been killing them. It's like, and that's kind of why people are wondering, how does Brandon Beane get promoted to president of football operations when he hasn't been able to really fix some of these things?
Well, let me ask you this. If the roster's so bad, why over the last 6 years are they like 5th in points scored and like 3rd in points allowed? If the roster sucks.
Well, that's what one is Josh Allen on offense. The other is Sean McDermott's a good defensive coach. They've done a good job with what but I think I saw the stat. They've had 2 Pro Bowlers drafted since Josh Allen showed up. And so they're scheming it up well. Josh Allen's just like with Mahomes. Josh Allen is carrying a lot of these guys offensively. James Cook helps. The offensive line helps. But I do agree. Look, I mean, I think it's a copycat league. We know it's a copycat league. And once owners start seeing things around the league happening, like John Harbaugh getting fired, like Mike Tomlin leaving Pittsburgh, it makes it easier for, Terry Pacula, the Bills owner, to say, well, you know what, maybe we need to move on from Sean McDermott. Maybe we can find somebody better. And Sam's right. You don't know if you're going to get somebody better. You better know you got a home run coming, which is why those jobs, why I think they're very – look, you got 2 MVPs out there looking for head coaches. And those are the best jobs out there. right? But it's also a very difficult job because now the next guy in the room's got to go win a Super Bowl. It's not going to be you can come in here and be 11-6 or 12-5 and bow out in the divisional round. You got to come in and get it done. But I was not surprised because I felt like the last couple of years McDermott's been in this place of how far can they go with him as the head coach. Just as I think Mike Tomlin's been in that place, Tony Dungy was in that place in Tampa. There's been a lot of coaches who've been in that place, and sometimes you have to just, as an owner, say, "Well, I want to try something new," because Josh Allen is 30,
and there is a history of it working. John Gruden went into Tampa and won. Tony Dungy went to Indianapolis and won. I mean, like. Yep. There is a history of teams being up and running and needing the new voice and the new voice working.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's
this absolutely could end up being the right move. And I think more likely than not it is, because there are better names out there. And I do think that it just comes time where separation's best for all sides involved. I just think the one thing that I mentioned that I think is getting lost in the Sean McDermott conversation is what Jeff said. He's a great defensive coach. Like their defense, go look up their defensive numbers year by year. It's like 1, 2, 4, 6. I mean, they're putting up good defensive numbers, and I think that has gotten lost in the fact that, hey, Josh Allen on the other side so great.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think it's a fair point. Listen, you can always support the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast by supporting our great sponsors like Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Kansas City's best for more than 30 years. I'll let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve any of your parking lot problems. They've been doing it since 1994. One contractor, all things parking lots. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com and by our friends at Frontier Justice. Lee Summit, KCK, Jenks, Oklahoma, 3 locations. Frontier Justice offers firearms retail, a premier indoor shooting range, and training all under one roof. Learn more at frontier-justice.com. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red Gold.